Our next moderator in the panel that we have assembled is going to talk about the NASA's iTech as a model for stimulating innovation. Kira Blackwell is an executive in the Office of the Chief Technologist at NASA. Really, two things sum her up. She's an entrepreneur, and she's passionate about space exploration. She's bringing both of those together in a unique program. We look forward to hearing about it.
That was really short and sweet. Thank you. Works for me. Well, so Steve just told you I'm with NASA headquarters, and I'm here to talk about a program that we started at headquarters about a year ago called NASA iTech. If we plan to send humans further than we've ever sent them before, then what we know is it requires unprecedented technical challenges that we're facing. In order to solve those, we've got to have an unprecedented approach to solving those problems, which we believe is what iTech does. Part of our challenge is to discover new approaches, concepts, and technologies that solve critical technical gaps to enable human exploration to Mars and beyond. So you might be asking us, how are you doing that? We need to find the most innovative technologies, attract entrepreneurs who want to make a profound impact, and connect them with potential partners who can help them make their solution successful. So you're asking yourself, you're with NASA. Don't you guys have all of the smart people there? Aren't they working on all those challenges? And I would say we have a lot of the really smart people there working on a lot of those challenges. But the truth is we know that we don't have the monopoly on great ideas. A lot of these technologies are being developed to solve problems here on Earth that we could use to help solve problems in space for us. And so we've just got to figure out a way to leverage those. And we want to work with them, which is why we started iTech. We work with small businesses, innovators, universities, and even other government agencies to leverage what they're doing in their agency to partner together with us. However, what we've learned is entrepreneurs see some barriers that they really don't want to deal with. And I would say that paperwork kills more than just trees, kills innovation. So we decided to remove those barriers, create a 5-page white paper so that entrepreneurs could submit their proposals or ideas to some of our challenges and potentially remove other barriers as well. Another barrier that we see is intellectual property. Most entrepreneurs would like to maintain their intellectual property. We invest as a government agency a lot in developing cutting-edge technologies that have a space application specifically. But if we're looking for technologies that are solving problems here on Earth, it doesn't make sense for us as a government agency to try and take the intellectual property for ourselves. It makes better sense if we could leverage the technology, help them use a platform like NASA to help them raise the private dollars to further develop the technology, which is what we're doing. So NASA iTech doesn't take the intellectual property because we don't give them federal dollars. But I will tell you that, and you'll hear from Jose down at the end, there are the companies that have participated so far have raised millions of dollars, private dollars, to further develop the technologies that we've identified in the last year. Another barrier that we've noticed or we've heard about is that generally when we put out a solicitation, we prescribe the solution. We tell them exactly what we want or the technology we're looking for, and that creates a problem because sometimes the technology we're looking for might not be the solution. So what I've done is I've decided to issue challenge focus areas, basically listing things like major areas of challenges, and then I'm allowing the entrepreneurs or innovators to come up with a solution to solving some of our challenges. And if you look at the very last category, the X factor, that's sort of if NASA only knew I had this technology, that's the category that they could submit that for. We've got a great process where those proposals are evaluated and we're able to do a great down select for these proposals, and some amazing technologies have come out of this, which you're going to hear about today. We provide the right time, the right place, and the right people so that entrepreneurs can make an impact. Because what we've learned is most entrepreneurs or most innovators are wanting to change the world. They're not wanting to make the next $1 million just for the sake of making money. They want to see that what they're doing is changing people's lives. And so if we can provide that platform for that to happen, and for the solutions that we need can also change people's lives here on Earth, then I think we might have tapped into something that could be useful. If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, you're a leader. I feel as though NASA, our agency, is sort of leading the way for government agencies to work with, leverage cutting-edge technologies across the globe to help entrepreneurs partner with us without losing intellectual property as they move forward and begin changing other people's lives, but impacting space. And so if you want to get involved, this is just a quick, people will say, how do we get involved? Kira, here's my business card. Honestly, we had created on our website a space under Get Involved tab that you can actually go in and put your name, your email, and you'll be notified. You can select if you're an investor, if you're an entrepreneur. You can select any of those categories, and you'll get an automatic email notification that'll tell you when our next solicitation is, when the next forum is, and it's open to the public. So if you'd like to attend, we just usually have a limitation on seating. So if you get your information in pretty quickly, that's really helpful. So we have three of our top entrepreneurs here today that are going to talk about their technologies that were selected in July. I also have with us Harry. He's one of our chief technologists out of our Ames Research Center. And I have Francisco, who is one of the other government agencies that participate, or he came to our last forum and he realized what we're doing with NASA is something that can also help the EPA. There were several technologies that came out of our last cycle that he realized could also be useful for some of the challenges that the EPA is facing. Watch this video for just a second.
NASA iTech is a unique initiative to find innovative solutions to problems here on Earth and apply those ideas to solving the challenges of future space exploration. The top 10 finalist innovators for NASA iTech Cycle 2 were recognized at the NASA iTech Forum for their technical viability, the likely impact on space exploration, and the potential for commercialization. The top 3 teams were Context AI, Omni Burroughs, and the University of Houston. Context AI from Santa Clara, California showcased a wearable biosensor array that turns the body's vibrations, sounds, and bioelectric impulses into actionable intelligence to identify heart problems at very early stages. Earlier detection of health issues could lead to lower costs and better outcomes for patients on Earth and preventative care for astronauts on long-duration flights. The Omni Burroughs team at the Children's National Health System in Washington, D.C. presented a smart robotic surgery technology called STAR. This advanced platform for surgeon-supervised intelligent autonomous robotic surgery reduces human error and complications during minimally invasive procedures. Smart autonomous surgical systems such as this could also prove valuable for future deep space missions. And the University of Houston introduced a new material that repels ice. Inspired by wood frogs, the adaptive surface works like a pair of glasses that change to sunglasses when you go outdoors. The material performs normally at ambient temperatures, but becomes an anti-icing surface when exposed to extreme cold. This could greatly enhance the safety of aircraft and space vehicles and protect power lines in severe winter weather. The top 3 entries are all moving their innovative ideas forward, bringing us closer to addressing gaps in technology for future space exploration. iTech Cycle 3 opens in September. Find out how you can get involved at nasaitech.com.
So that's how to get involved, and I'm going to start asking some questions. So basically I'm going to introduce each of them or allow them to talk a little bit about their technology, and then I'm just going to pose some questions that might be helpful for you understanding how we're working with them, and then I'll move to our next set of speakers. So, Sean, do you want to tell me a little bit about your technology and your experience with iTech?
Absolutely. So good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Kira and the NASA iTech team. It's been a tremendous experience, not only with the mentorship that leads up to the NASA iTech, but also the post-winning events as well, including this. So Context AI provides physicians, patients, and consumers actionable information that helps patients avoid disease and predict illness. And we do this by combining aggregated medical data with novel data from our sensors, wearable sensors, that record every sound, vibration, and impulse in your body in order to create really these actionable insights to prevent disease. The stethoscope was invented about 200 years ago, but it only provides less than 10% of the audio frequencies that come out of the human heart. We designed our acoustic sensors not just for human interpretation, but for machine learning. Same with EKG, it's really interpretable by humans, but we have created broad sensors specifically for machine learning that measure the changes in the bioelectric fields from your body. And we use this information to essentially create physical health fingerprints across tens of thousands of diseased patients. So then when a patient wears our patch, we're able to identify and predict disease within those patients. So ultimately, we're the action that we're providing, we hope to address the congestive heart failure market and preventing hospitalizations, saving healthcare system money, and saving patients' lives.
And so, Sean, Context AI was a part of our first cycle, and we select down to a top 3 that we work with and mentor in each of our cycles. And so, although you weren't selected for the first cycle, you were selected in the second cycle. What happened in that 6-month time period within Context AI?
So I think one event in particular is we were able to start our clinical study. A couple things. We were able to refine our clinical prototypes. So we've got working clinical systems that are approximately 12 sensors measuring the vibration, sounds, and electrical impulses of patients. And we've started a 500-patient study with the University of California at San Francisco, as well as 2 international sites. That really helps, I think, present the data, understand the data, and really communicate our objectives, as well as find that business model. And being able to communicate those 3 or 4 things in particular 6 or 9 months later, I think helped create more compelling presentation and interacting with the judges, which is a pretty grueling day, by the way. It was a fun event, but it includes, 15 minutes PowerPoint and 3 hours of roundtable judges.
So the size of your sensor also changed a little.
Certainly. I mean, we were able to invest in miniaturize our sensor. Right now we have kind of a 2-pronged approach where we've got a hardware system that's adaptable to and has the degrees of freedom to listen to various organs and collect information, really high quality data, while we really kind of define the requirements and miniaturize the patch such that right now we have the vest. The patient will wear a vest for about 5 minutes to create the baseline, these digital biomarkers, which we're calling physical health fingerprints. But ultimately, they're going to leave the clinic with a wearable patch, waterproof, lightweight, wireless patch connected to your cell phone and the cloud. And ultimately, we're a data science company. So improving our algorithms, particularly around deep learning, machine learning, and collecting that data from the patients are all areas that we've made incredible improvements, and really we've got a terrific team of both data scientists, engineers, and a multidisciplinary effort, including about 8 cardiologists.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. I'm going to go on to Peter for a second. Peter is, tell me a little bit about your technology, and then I have a question for you.
So we are interested in democratizing surgery. So we want to program best surgeons' techniques and judgments into a machine and have it available for everybody. And here's why you want to think about it. Each year, there are about 230 million procedures performed around the world. That's about 140 million procedures short. It takes about 10, 15 years to produce a surgeon, and you will never produce enough surgeons to meet that unmet need. The other thing is that even with all the technological advances, the complication rates that are associated with specific procedures really haven't changed. And then anytime you get a complication, your risk of dying goes up fairly substantially. So we want to sort of essentially improve that by programming best surgeons' judgments and techniques into it and have it available. And what we did was to improve vision, intelligence, and dexterity part of it. And at the same time, did a first sort of a surgical procedure in live animals. Essentially, this is very similar to space applications, as in being able to do a sort of a mobile, deformable target in an unstructured environment. So surprisingly, when sort of autonomous robot did the surgical procedures, it outperformed surgeons. So with a little improvements, we think that we can improve outcomes, improve safety, and then decrease complications and improve sort of and habitability for everybody around the world.
So, Peter, you're one of the top surgeons at Children's National, and I can't help but wonder, what made you want to go down the path for building an autonomous or robot that can replace you in your role potentially? I mean, was there something that happened maybe in your life that kind of made you make that decision? Can you
Right.
share a little bit about it?
Right. The epiphany for me was that I was teaching my son how to ski a number of years ago. He was about 4 or 5 years old, and then I do these airway reconstructions for little babies. So babies are born with tiny little breathing pipes, and if you don't fix them, they all die. And we were on the top of the hill, and I got a call about a baby that's coming over from about 3-4 hours away from the West Coast. The challenge was that obviously if I didn't get down safely, it wasn't good for me, and nor was it good for the baby. So it occurred to me that any knowledge that's contained within sort of one individual is not a very good knowledge, and you should be able to program it or have it in a technology that can be transmitted horizontally across to your colleagues and then vertically to next generation. So hence sort of a notion about wanting to democratize surgery. That's so really the motivation.
And so how do you see your technology solving a problem for NASA in space?
Right. So I'm always inspired, and I'm particularly thankful for NASA iTech and the Space Foundation for this opportunity. But you know, the space has always been an aspirational thing for humanity, and then obviously if we are planning to go to another planet, as in if we are going to be multi-planetary species at some point, when you look at the current sort of communication technology, it takes too long to call if you've got a surgical emergencies, or it's too far to come back for surgical emergencies. I think so you will need to think about autonomous systems, and we don't have enough surgeons on Earth to send every time you have a mission up there. So, and if you're going to colonize Moon or Mars or what have you, I think these are the sort of autonomous systems you need to think about. The interesting part is very much like autonomous cars. The idea is there are technologies that are coming on board, I think, that can complement human capacity and capability so that outcomes can be improved, minimize complications, and then improve safety.
And so you mentioned earlier that the robot outperformed the human.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit better?
So this was a preclinical study using our research prototype, and then we set it up as an intestinal anastomosis as a sort of proof of concept surgical task. Over 1 million of these are done around the world, in United States alone, for instance, for GI, urologic, gynecologic, and so on. So we compare the robot doing autonomously of these intestinal anastomosis versus really experienced and some of the internationally well-known surgeons doing it using current technology, which is open surgical tools or minimal invasive surgical tools or well-known Da Vinci tools. And when we measured all different parameters, and then these, by the way, the machines are operated by engineers, they outperformed surgeons, except the timing part, which was comparable to what they would use for minimal invasive surgical tools. So it was a sobering, and yet surprising to me that with a very little improvements in vision, so we used a sort of a hyperspectral vision plus 3D planoptic, meaning that it gives awareness, situational awareness to the robot, and then a little bit of intelligence and dexterity part, you can outperform what's considered a really standard of care. So just imagine what it could be possible in the near future.
I'm ready. Sign me up. Okay, I'm going to go to the next speaker. Hadi, can you talk a little bit about your technology? Oh, wait, before he goes there, he actually came from Houston. Okay, I didn't think he was going to be able to show up on the panel. And lots of floods. His house was flooded or surrounded by, all the roads around his home initially was flooded. And so luckily they went down enough and he drove to Dallas and hopped a plane and he made it here. So I'm just happy he's here, but I just wanted you guys to have a little more appreciation for what he went through to be here on this stage today. So go ahead, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. The technology that we have is a new generation of anti-icing surfaces. So looking at the anti-icing problem, I thought that there may be some species in the nature that they can survive in the winter and give us some ideas about the new material that we can use for anti-icing surfaces. I found wood frogs that they can survive in the winter, and 65% of their body water can be frozen, but they are still alive and live happily. So I looked at the biology of these wood frogs and found that mimicking the biology of those wood frogs, we can generate a new material that can be outstanding anti-icing performance. So the idea was, we came up with this idea 2 years ago, and we worked continuously with the really sophisticated teams of PhD students in my groups. And finally, we found a new material. I have the material here for you that outperform on all the materials that are currently available in the market in anti-icing performance. It's durable. At this time, we have the IP on this material, and we hope that we can develop this material in the market, not because of the financial part of this aspect of this material, but if you look at the human life, every winter in the just United States, 3 million people will suffer from power outage because of the icing problem. So if we can address this problem, it's a huge advantage for us.
And so how is the material applied?
So material is applied as a spray coating, so it will come as a spray that you can coat on the surface, and it will cure in 10 minutes.
And it cures in 10 minutes. How long does it last on the surface?
So the life that we have for this material now is more than 10 years. It can keep its performance up to 10 years, but after 10 years, you will have some degradation. But we are working also to extend this life of this material.
I think 10 years is pretty good. What about the weight of the product when you spray it on a surface?
So the material is made of the polymer. It's one of the lightest material that you can find in nature. So regarding the weight, there's no problem on the weights on any surface that you are going to coat. So if you look at the different application of this material, not just aerospace applications, aero applications, I think you have face this problem every winter. You are going to take off from the airport. You should put some anti-icing fluids on the surface, and it costs $1,000 up to $10,000, depending on the size of the aircraft. But also power transmission system. When you have icing, you have ice flashing, collapse of towers, infrastructures, and these are just few examples of the importance of anti-icing surfaces.
Thank you, Hadi. I'm gonna actually go to our chief technologist now and let him talk to you a little bit about his participation in iTech. Harry is one of our chief technologists at our Ames Research Center, but I would say he's probably one of the most knowledgeable in terms of cutting-edge technologies and what's out there. He probably reads somewhere about 330 to 350 proposals a year, which is quite a bit. So, if you have any technology questions, he's your go-to guy, or he is for me. But Harry, you've been a part of this program since the beginning, and so can you tell me a little bit about maybe how you could see this as valuable for the agency, how there's a benefit here?
There are a lot of benefits. NASA is very much a contracting, it does solicitations and stuff. And so this was really a new way of looking at how to bring proposals in. They're quick to review, so they were easy to review. Since NASA's not paying for it, relax some of the regulations, and the quality of the presentations at the iTech was really fantastic. I mean, they got mentored and stuff, and they were really first class. But what really made it interesting is that we could actually talk with them about their concept and make suggestions for it, and how we could use it. So that interaction was different than what we normally do on proposals and the way the government does it. The other thing that was really fascinating is that the review panels is more than NASA. Normally we bring NASA or contract or academics in and stuff. This time we brought venture capitalists, business, and we were able to look at the technologies from a different perspective than we would normally look at them. So those combinations of that was really very beneficial for us in evaluating them and looking at it. And some of the proposals we saw were, and for an area, they were probably the best concepts I've seen in any proposal that I've ever read. And so I am at NASA Ames, which is in Silicon Valley, so we're right near in Mountain View. And I hate to tell you it, but I read many more than 350 proposals a year, but that's all right.
Hey, I was taking a good guess, sorry.
So we do, so the government, I mean, it's interesting to see how the government, and I've reviewed for many other agencies, not just NASA, what we do in reviewing proposals versus, say, how venture capitalists, and I've always known they were very different, but by participating in this, we got to see some of those differences, and it was a useful insight into the technologies. So.
Thank you, Harry. And I can just say that from the entrepreneurs that have participated in the cycles, one of the biggest impacts for them is being able to sit down, just like Harry said, him being able to engage with the entrepreneurs has been very beneficial because for both sides, because we're able to have a better understanding of where they're going with the technology, but also having a chief technologist, all of our chief technologists at each of our field centers participate in this, and so it really helps with our core competencies, understanding where we're at in that current state of technology. But from an entrepreneur standpoint, being able to engage with a NASA leader within our agency, and that leader be able to guide them and say, well, we've tested these areas, but you might want to look at something in this area. And so during those impact roundtables, Harry, can you give maybe some examples of maybe a company you talked to, that how you think you might have helped them maybe, or given them advice, or?
Well, so points of contact within NASA, people who are interested in it, how it compares with things that NASA's funding, some NASA programs that they could consider funding, how it ties into the programs and long-range plans that we have.
Yeah, all of those are great points, and there are ways in which it helps the entrepreneurs. From our first cycle, one of the top three, they already have their molecules being tested in our water filtration system out of Marshall, just to see if it works in that environment. One of the others of the top three, they were selected in December, so less than a year ago. They're already working with JPL to negotiate how they're going to work together with that technology in that center. And again, I don't guarantee any funding or give them funding, but there are ways in which these entrepreneurs can work with the agency if we're really interested in it, which is the key part to having the chief technologist look at it, because we actually get 25 top proposals and go through those proposals, determining which of those top 10 are most applicable to addressing some of our space challenges. So I'm going to go on to Francisco for a second, and Francisco is with the EPA, and Francisco participated in our last forum. So tell me a little bit about your role within the EPA and why you're sitting on a space panel with iTech.
I'm also wondering why I'm sitting at a space panel. But no, so I'm a biologist at EPA, and my job is in the emergency response world. So I'm with a group known as the CBRN, Consequence Management Advisory Division. And CBRN, for those of you who don't know, is the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, so WMD. So our job is to respond to some sort of CBRN incident and make sure that we can restore the environment for reoccupancy. So disposing of waste, making sure we can decontaminate areas, sampling and analysis. So we tackle a lot of tough challenges with different agents that are not prevalent and that are dangerous and lethal. So that's the role that we play in the agency, and I'm specifically the biologist for the team. So as far as why am I at a space panel, Kira approached me about coming out and taking a look at the way they approach some of their challenging gaps. And when you talk about emergency response, you want to talk about unprecedented technology challenges. Every emergency response is an unprecedented technology challenge. It may be that you may have the same type of scenario, but the circumstances as far as resources available, the community you're working within, the time frame that you need to accomplish the mission that you're assigned to, it's all different. So what I like to tell people is I want to have the biggest toolbox I can have so I can pick and choose and respond accordingly. And this, when Kira approached me, I was kind of like, that sounds great, but I think I'm going to go to some meetings. And then Kira dragged me out and brought me to the challenges. And then when I heard the presentations, especially from the top three, I was blown away by the way they're able to attract some of these companies to answer some of their challenges that are tough technology challenges. Right. And we have some of those tough science challenges as well that, although we have fantastic scientists and we have people that are working around the clock to try to answer some of the challenges we have, the reality is, we don't have the budget we would like to have to be able to tackle some of the challenges in the way we would like to. So it's definitely a great time to start looking outside of the paradigm that we operate under, to look at different ways and different companies that are trying to answer these challenges. And the great thing, just from sitting at the NASA iTech, was looking at how some of these technologies, even though they were geared for space, we could repurpose them for our own challenges in the CBRN world. And that's something that I brought back to our agency, and also talking to some of the entrepreneurs and kind of looking outside of just your specific niche and seeing how some of the technologies could be repurposed for different scientific challenges in the environment, in space, and in medicine.
Can you give me an example of one of the technologies that you saw in July that you felt like could be applicable?
So in July, being a government employee, I have to give the quick, these are my opinions. These are not the opinions of the United States government or the EPA, and none of this should be
We don't have reporters
interpreted
in here, do we?
as some sort of an endorsement.
Don't worry, Francisco. It'll go on NASA Watch, not EPA Watch.
I have to say it. Now that I'm done doing that part. So some of the technologies, one that didn't make the top three but was really interesting was a company, Bitome, who was looking at hydration, how to measure hydration. So you might be wondering, why does EPA care about hydration? Well, when we send hazmat workers into the hot zone, into the contaminated area, they're wearing these what are essentially moon suits, these fully encapsulated suits where stress level goes up, your perspiration increases, and it's a very high stress environment and a high stress type of a suit you have to wear. So how do we tell if someone's okay when they're in there? Well, we measure their body temperature, take their blood pressure, and we kind of give them a pat on the back. Yep. You okay?
Yeah.
And that's it. So being able to measure hydration would be huge for us, not only to make sure that our workers are safe, but also to be able to quantify, can they go back into the hot zone? Do they need more rest? Do they need more hydration? That would be huge for us as far as being able to work in a safer environment for the health and safety of others. And actually, Context AI, their technology would be huge for us also on the health and safety front, again, wearing these level A suits. A quick story, I was conducting an exercise with some local and state responders. They were wearing the level A suits, taking blood pressure, taking temperature, pat on the back, and saying, hey, you okay? Unfortunately, one of the responders, 20 minutes into the exercise, had a heart attack and actually passed away. He had an underlying heart condition, didn't really tell us what was going on. The stress levels became too great, and his body couldn't overcome the stress. Something like a context AI, if we were able to use that as another parameter in order to simply and easily measure how the body is reacting to that high stress condition, and also be able to incorporate some of the hydration technology, that would go a long way to keeping our workers safe. And you see some of the work going on in Houston. People are already really stressed. There's a lot of adrenaline going on. Your body is not used to that. Being able to just go beyond body temperature and blood pressure with some basic technological additions, that'll go a long way to keeping a lot of people safe, keeping our responders safe, and thus keeping the community safe.
Thank you, Francisco. I'm going to go on to our last panel member, and his name's Jose, and I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about your background and what you're doing, and how you got engaged with iTech and how you're still involved.
Yeah. So what we do in Kalis Partners is if you watch it, Ed Swallow's brief, that brief he just gave, it's spot on. That's really the marketplace we're dealing with space. We see it a little bit different, but the facts are that there are models today where those companies can fail and investors will make a lot of money. So where we come in as Kalis is saying, look, we want to manifest that technology, but we also want to make sure the strategic support for them financially is there throughout. So things like investor profiles, are they a match to what the company's trying to do? So what we've had to do, normally in other markets, you would have different consultants, you would have different investors. In space, because of the lack of consulting and the lack of being able to bridge that, we had to take on both. And so we take end-to-end work from entrepreneurs and work also with investors to ensure that we have the right profiles to address the resiliency of those companies that you just saw in those charts that don't necessarily have the best outcomes. And that's where we focus on. So we started this company about 18 months ago. And about 6 months as we were learning, getting our way through and stumbling, like any good fund manager that's starting out, we were here. We were right here. We were on the same seats you were at. And I saw a presentation from Kira. A lot of people didn't notice. A lot of folks didn't know exactly where she was coming from because they never associated NASA with the integration of investing and being able to look at different ways as to how IPs can be used and have resiliency to be able to support NASA. So I seized the moment. I said, hey, you don't know me now, but you will know me later. And whatever the heck you're doing, I want a part of that. Because if you're in the investment business, it's about deal flow. So, and again, we're not big. We're about 5. Our CFO is sitting right over there. And our focus in terms of deal flow, remember, we have to look at it. If we want to be successful, truly successful, both financially and technically, you got to address national state interests. You got to address commercial competition, and you also have to address any scientific collaboration where NASA normally sits at. So our approach led us here because we needed to have the right deal flow. So let me give you the stats. We participated in both cycles as judges in the investor side. So we had 10 obviously in each cycle. 8 of them fit our investment thesis. 5 we went into consult with in some advisory role. 2 we took to funding. 1, this is in a span of 6 months. 1 we're still in a struggle, but they're an amazing company. It's going to take us a little longer than we thought. And then 1 we closed within 3 months for them to get $9 million in the bank so they can move on. And they actually, that one company was a second time in NASA iTech and was not a top 10 either time. So just to tell you the qualitative performance of some of the companies that are showing up. Why is that? Because the screening, the due diligence, all these little things that you are concerned with technology-wise or future demand signals, NASA already took care of it. So every 6 months, I'm seeing 10 in the queue, and that helps us build a deal flow for somebody small like us for quite a bit of time. Not only that, but it helps us look at where else we can create resiliency in terms of an investment for the industry. So if you're stuck on, I want to be in space and only space, well, let me help you. Space is a domain. It's just where you do stuff. So we gotta help some of these companies being able to manifest on Earth. But
Jose,
yeah, that's how I got involved, and thank you to the Space Foundation for that.
Jose, I'm going to ask you a question since this is being recorded and we might actually have reporters in the room, so I thought I might just throw it out there. And I don't look great in orange or stripes. So, Jose, do I pay you as a civil servant to work with any of these companies?
No, you don't have to. You don't have to pay me. I probably would have paid in. Just think of it this way as an
He
investor.
doesn't pay us either.
I would have to.
So that's
yeah,
clear.
yeah, don't record that either. But
See, this is why I didn't buy it back
the point is that to do the due diligence that we would have to do, no kidding, due diligence from an investor perspective. Where else and I say this, I said this previous other times. I don't go get the technical expert that is a retired person or this guy, individual that I have to hire. I have my own, and I could bring them in. But how much better than having the CTO of a NASA center sitting with me talking to that technology? I mean, how much validation can you possibly get? And by the way, in cycle 2, they upped the ante by bringing me an EPA individual that's in the market doing the work now. Not somebody I got to hire, spin him up, or a retiree that's got to spin up. Maybe he's off the market. It's happening right there and then. The technologies, again, I'm not even going to discuss any of them because there were some that were so great that they're going to definitely make a dent in the industry.
He's not wanting to share, I think.
No, that's what good investors do. They hog a little bit, but yeah. No, and if you're an investor, any good investment organization is looking out for different quarters. So we look in periods of quarterly investing cycles. And the types of companies you're seeing, like Houston, those are great for forecasting, being able to where you're going to put your money down later on. So you get a breadth and a depth of companies with great technologies that can help you as an investor align over time. I mean, where else are you going to get that? I would have to hunt that down, go somewhere else, pay someone to do that. I don't have to do that. I can just attend, participate, and support these great companies, align that technology with their financial strategy. So it works out great.
Thank you, Jose. So I would actually like to open it up for some questions. If anybody has questions for the panel members on stage, I think it would be helpful because you might have questions that I didn't think of. So, and we have a few minutes left, so.
Hi, my name is John Anderson. I'm with Blaylock Van, and I have a question I wanted to direct to Peter. I know you're not endorsing any particular companies out there, but I had a question. Is a company like Intuitive Surgical, with their robotics and their surgery, is that are you following part of their business model when you're going out and looking to have recreate the situation for the surgeons?
So the market, there's only a single player in the market, Intuitive, which has a $20 billion cap. It's been around since 1995. They sold 3,000 units, and market sort of in terms of clinical penetration is in low double digit, as in less than 15% for all surgical procedures. There's fundamentally something that is not quite right about the technology. I think it's a great technology to start, and then I think this is a reason why some of the other key players, such as Verb and Medtronic, are getting in the line. What's fundamentally different about how we're approaching it is twofold. Number one, when you look at regulatory aspect of these medical devices, you just have to be just as good and just as safe, and they don't demand that it be better. So what's fundamentally what we are aiming is that we are looking for better outcome, better safety, less complication. That's one aspect. And second thing is that I think one of the key reasons why the adoption hasn't been as good is because I think some of these technologies are outstripping human capacity to be able to handle the information. So I think having that sort of a superhuman capabilities, whether it be in a vision, intelligence, or dexterity side, I think that paradigm is very important in terms of being collaborative as we move into the future. So it's a platform technology, and then we're between seed and Series A, and then we are prepared to fully compete with the giants.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Kira, actually. You say you've got winners, you know, you've got this cycle, you've got top 10, you know, this is, you know, sort of Hollywood media, reality TV show kind of speak. You also say that you don't give money. What actually do you do? Is this a Space Act agreement? What does a winner get?
So the reason, you're correct. We do have cycles. We do have winners. Well, they get a trophy. Okay, more than a trophy. We help to put them in touch with the right people, investors. We provide the platform where they can engage with VCs, where they can engage with our major contractors, Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman. From our last cycle in July, 6 of the companies met with Northrop Grumman. Because when we have our impact tables, they sit down with them one-on-one and they exchange contact information. They ask additional questions. The entrepreneurs are able to talk with them and then they follow up. And these are groundbreaking technologies, very smart people, and the people that we have in the room that work with them are interested in the technology. So we provide mentorship for the top 3. That's why we have a down select to top 3. Really, it has to do with bandwidth. Yes, we don't give them dollars. If we're testing someone's molecules in our water filtration system, that's done through a non-reimbursable Space Act agreement. Or we purchase a certain amount of those from that organization to test it to see if it works. And I do that specifically to ensure that the technology that they're developing can pursue a commercial path by getting investors and things like that. Generally, VCs or any investors are kind of opposed to government-owned technology. So I had to figure out a way to set up. I knew what the rules were. I had to figure out how to build something that we could function within those rules, but also was a win for the entrepreneur, a win for NASA, a win for VCs that as they get involved and engaged. Did that help to answer your question?
You know, I can also comment maybe on behalf of Context AI. In addition to the networking that goes on at NASA headquarters for the full week with chief technologists and many representatives around the United States, we've already got, as winners, meetings set up and collaborating with flight surgeons out of Houston with astronaut programs, where our goal is to measure these digital fingerprints, these digital biomarkers on Earth, and then to look at the deltas as astronauts go into microgravity environments and see how these biomarkers change in space versus Earth. And of course, we're looking to not only be technology that can be part of Mars missions, but can be helpful here on Earth, as well as meetings set up with Edwards flight surgeons for some of the loss of consciousness we're involved with G-forces and G-lock. So, I mean, it's really, like she said, the networking involved, but also kind of the access and really collaboration that we get as finalists has been incredibly helpful and creates an opportunity for us to solve problems that we find are also very applicable here in healthcare systems and here in the current healthcare hospitals and system.
So I want to jump in on that, Sean, because you're spot on. But on top of that, Chuck, the big part of this is we can, in that room, you have the expertise to solve what is the best way to take care of this company at the end of the day, because they may be coming in saying, hey, I want to have a partner. Literally, I'll tell you, one company came in and it was hung up on, I want to have a partnership with the U.S. government because this is, you know, my life's work and I want to contribute to the government. 7 weeks later, that individual at least was able to look at the commercial aspect of that, and we could get that individual linked up with the right mentorship so that in time can do it.
Yes.
That individual would have never seen that. And the feedback is amazing because
Right.
they may be getting feedback technologically saying, hey, your widget is really, really good,
Right.
but NASA may or may not align with it right now. That's fine, because somebody like me can sit in the same room and go, wait, there's another place we can use this,
Yes.
and we can align it, so don't stop doing your work. You have, in some cases, like University of Houston, they're starting out, but if you have somebody we have companies there that were finishing up an A series going to a B series raise. So that's a completely different discussion. The beauty of it is those discussions are coming back with literally the technologists and the experts right now in the industry, you know, that can help us from a government perspective look at it.
And normally, when you submit a proposal for when a solicitation comes out, you're never going to get the opportunity that you get to sit down with our chief technologist
Yeah.
across our agency. And that's critical. It's critical for the entrepreneurs. And they have provided a great amount of help having the technologists understand where the direction they're going or where they need to go, or if they're focused on one area. Having that insight and information has been incredibly valuable, more valuable than any dollar I could have ever given them. And I'll also say that one of the companies that was part of the top 10, they weren't selected as a winner. Their phase 1 clinical trials was funded just because they were selected for NASA iTech.
Yeah. Oh, and then just so you know, in the room there's VC, family office representation. There was angels, in terms of angels. So the entrepreneur in both NASA then got to see something they'd never seen, the different types of monies and what type of temperament those investors have. Some are very short, some are much longer duration and much patient. So both sides got to see a lot. You get a lot out of it.
Okay, we had a question in the back.
Yeah.
So I would like to commend NASA. We, as a company, received some powerful research from SATOP, Space Alliance Technology Outreach Program, in 2005. And as a result of that research, we've created 100 jobs, a $50 million company. And I would just encourage anyone who can have the opportunity to work with one of the NASA affiliates. I work with Kennedy Space Center, but the SATOP program, and from what I understand, NASA iTech, it's a great benefit to our country. And this private business and government collaboration is what makes our country great. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. Amir, did you have a question?
An observation. So Kira and I have been in touch about this particular subject since she joined the office about a year ago, and she took this thing, you know, to answer what your comment was a little bit from something that was pretty ephemeral in terms of who gets what kind of reward, what does NASA get out of this, what do the entrepreneurs get out of this, and she really took this concept that if you bring different disciplines together and bring these different areas of interest together, then there's a greater societal benefit, there's payback to the government, there's a greater understanding in the non-space community about what interaction with the space community can do for a company economically. And so I just wanted to commend the work that you've done on taking a concept that was kind of not very well defined and turning it into a program that's become something very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, guys.